Can you tell me about the press conference this morning?
Yes, the press conference this morning was a very sad occasion. It was to announce the shutting of NOL, the National Women's Organization. It is very, very sad because it means that the cuts that the government has instituted against women's organizations is having an impact in shutting women down. Basically, the women's program, which was responsible for the last 34 years to foster women's equality, and to fund organizations that were working on behalf of women for women's equality. And these organizations in the past were instrumental, especially NOL, in fighting for Section 25 and 28 in the Charter of Rights for Women. That's when women first got their rights. Most people forget that women were not part of the Charter initially, that when the Charter was first brought forward, the women had been dropped off because the premiers in this country didn't want women to be part of the Charter. So women organized across this country, NOL and other organizations helped women to mobilize, and women were in fact given equality under the law in the Charter of Rights. Things like the rape shield law, which it was again fought for by women, which protects young women in the courts. It was what made it illegal and was made part of the law, where husbands could rape their wives. I mean, these kinds of things were fought for by organizations like NOL. But other things like economic security for women, parental leave, pay equity, Aboriginal women's rights, immigrant women's rights. There's a whole slew of issues that still are to be addressed. Women are still only earning 70 cents to the dollar than men earn. We still have immigrant women who are not able to access certain services. There's still the Aboriginal women's issues. Childcare which affects women's poverty and women's more than families, all families, but women in particular. National childcare program still now has been dropped by the government. So what the government did, Stephen Harper, when he came to power, he took the Status of Women Canada program, changed its mandate completely. So Status of Women Canada is no longer responsible for fostering women's equality, is no longer responsible for fostering women's social justice, economic, political, and political as well. The research budget was completely eliminated. The advocacy is no longer allowed. So any organization who's out there doing research and advocating on behalf of women, say violence against women, to establish can no longer do any advocacy at all, and they will not be funded. But the government will fund for-profit and religious organizations. I mean, it's absolutely bizarre. So domestic violence and violence against women in this country has not been resolved. It's still a major issue. And yet, this government has basically said, no advocacy, nobody can speak on behalf of women. If you do, you cannot get funding from the Government of Canada. And at the same time, they've shut down the Law Commission of Canada and the Charter Challenge for any Canadian to be able to challenge government policy or institutional policy or laws that may abrogate their rights. So women's organizations in Canada are shutting down one by one. There have been others that have shut down. This is one of the largest and one of the most prominent and most important organization, because a lot of other smaller organizations across the country in regions have taken their research, their lead, and be able to take their support. So basically what is happening is that the Prime Minister has been extremely paternalistic. He's basically taking his lead from REL women, or REAL women as they call themselves, who have said that that pay equity is a myth, a feminist myth, and that childcare is a feminist ploy to keep women in the workplace instead of at home. I mean, this is bizarre. And yet this is the very kind of women that the Prime Minister is taking his lead from and his directions from. It's very paternalistic, very Neanderthal. That's what I said today, and it is. And it's and I would like to because who will the women go to, and who will speak for the violence against women? Who will speak for a national child care program? I will, but who will fight for these things? The sad part is that the Prime Minister is doing this while the United Nations has sent a message to Canada saying, clean up your act when it comes to women's rights. You have not got it yet. You're nowhere near there, and you've got problems. with respect to women's rights and human rights with respect to women, because women's rights are human rights issue. This government has basically not only turned its back, but has gone out of its way to shut down women's programs, to shut down institutional support that would help not only women, but any individual in Canada, any citizen in Canada that does not have the dollars to be able to challenge government policy at any level. They've gone out of their way to shut those down. The Charter Challenge, unless you're wealthy, you can no longer now challenge the Government of Canada on any policy. If it discriminates against you, too bad, too sad. And this is what's happening.
With the budget surplus of over $8 billion, I mean, can the government actually blame this on a financial situation, or are we looking at something miraculous to happen in the speech from the throne next month?
I don't expect any miracles from this particular government and the speech from the throne, and it's actually pathetic that a government that has a huge surplus as they have. By the way, they got the surplus because of the work the Liberals did for 12 years in power. They have this huge surplus. And then for them to being so Neanderthal and mean-spirited to take what little money there was going for women's equality in this country, and to take that away and to say, no, women shall not have a voice in Canada. Government has no role in helping women fight for their rights and for their equality. I think it is extremely pathetic. But then it's what I think Stephen Harper stands for. I do not believe that Stephen Harper believes that the government has any positive role to play in the lives of Canadians in any way, shape, or form. I think he believes that government is bad and government should stay out and do nothing for Canadians, for its citizens. And it should be small and eliminated. And if you have the ability to fight for your rights, fine. If not, too bad, too sad. And I think that's pretty pathetic and pretty... you know what is really, really sad? Is that Canada is out there in the world, through CEDA, working for women's rights in the developing world, fighting and helping women where they can, and being proud of it. We have soldiers dying in Afghanistan, protecting also and fighting for human rights and women's rights, to education, to health, and to all kinds of things. And yet here in Canada, he takes our big, huge surplus and cuts and eliminates and puts a tape over the mouth of women in this country and says, you shall not speak, you shall not say, you have no say in what government does, because I know better and I know what's good for you.
So what's the next step for women's rights groups in Canada? I mean, you mentioned that we're helping out foreign countries, that kind of thing. They may be actually in a better place than we are at this point. But what do you think the future agenda should be for women's rights groups in the future? Well,
we're not done. As this morning with all of the women that were there was a large group of women this morning. By the way, nobody from the government showed up. Obviously, they didn't like to hear what was being said. But women are not done. We're going to rise and fight back. The women's organizations out there, they may not have the money, but we have to find ways. We're going to look at men who are supporters of women. I know there are lots of them in this country, bankers, whoever, and try and pick their pockets. We're going to come back. We're going to push back. Harper is not going to have the last word.
If you could whisper in Mr. Harper's ear, what would you say?
Get out of our way and show respect. And if he goes around talking about China and human rights, well, he should walk the walk about human rights.